Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I have a very interesting subject today to discuss the Pakistani army with Lieutenant General Gautam Moorthy, who's here with me today, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this discussion on the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-scary Pakistani army to understand whether they know what it is good for themselves.
Thank you, Aadi. Thank you very much. Jai Hind to you and your viewers. And once again, happy to be on your channel. Aadi, you're right. Never before have we seen such a rupture in the upper echelon hierarchy of the Pakistan army, except once in 1999. That was very short-lived. I'll come to that later. These current tensions, it's obvious it must have started earlier with the uncalled for extension given to General Bajwa for 3 years in August 2019, purportedly because of India's removal of Article 370 and 35A. And one can understand why the hopefuls for the top posts there were disappointed and angry. This was just a fig leaf. I mean, what had removal of Article 370 and 35A got to do with changes in the Pakistan army? To my mind, it was what Bajwa wanted. He wanted an extension. And Imran played along using this as a perfect opportunity to do so. However, the generals who were overlooked and were forced to retire without coming up for contention must have been very, very annoyed, though they could not show it. Then, if one has been observing the going-ons there closely, one would have noticed that Imran was using the DGISI to arm twist the PLP, who in turn were getting at the politicians and others who were getting restless as the common man's problems were not being addressed at all. And this brought into picture a very interesting gentleman. You know who he is, General Faiz Hamid, the then DGISI, who came close to Imran, rather too close, a development that did not go well with his chief, General Bajwa. We also saw what happened in August last year when the Taliban took over Kabul in a blitzkrieg. General Faiz Hamid flew down there, and we all saw how he was preening himself in Hotel Serena in Kabul in the presence of Taliban leaders, implying it a victory for the ISI. I have spoken about this before to your viewers. And as for, and we all know what happened from reports emerging from Pakistan, it appears he went to Kabul without informing the chief, perhaps after discussing it with the PM. And as per these unconfirmed reports, on his return, he was marched up to the chief and upbraided for him. There's a report that says he was asked to remove his flag car before he drove into the army headquarters premises. He was marched into the AG's office, marched to the chief, and reprimanded by him. So it was again as a consequence of this that General Bajwa decided to replace him with General Nadeem Anjum. However, Imran did not sign on the file approving the posting and did so probably under duress. It was only finally on 19th November 2021 that General Hamid relinquished the appointment and go to Peshawar as 11th Corps. Now, this is unprecedented as far as the Pakistani army is concerned. And you know they hold the reins to the entire state. So this was something that has never before happened. And you're right in pointing out about these differences in the higher echelons.
That's what I wanted to actually start up with, sir. One of the things that we've seen that we've had differences before. Musharraf and Shahid Aziz had a bit of a clash during Nawaz Sharif's period, wherein Shahid Aziz was actually given the rank of the army chief, and the whole coup happened after that. But these things were behind closed doors. They were not discussed in public. They were not written about. They were not spoken about. They were not even known till years after these incidents. How do you see this dirty laundry being washed in public today and the perception of the army changing within Pakistan, sir?
Interesting question, Adi. Again, let me tell you that the Pakistan army is adapted using social media, but social media can also come back and bite them in the posterior, which is what has happened in this case. Social media is an animal that is out of control of governments, any government. Today, you see what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. And from both sides, you're getting Twitter feeds almost simultaneously as actions are taking place. You are getting stories planted, or some stories genuine, you're not able to find out. But the fact is, you're right, Pakistan has had military coups earlier, the last being that of General Musharraf, who took over in a very dramatic fashion in 1999 after his misadventure in Kargil. And then he, imagine the chief sacking the prime minister and sending him into exile to Saudi Arabia. By then, Pakistan had become an overtly nuclear state, and the Western powers were loath to condemn it. So General Musharraf stayed on for a good 9 years before he was forced to resign by the judiciary and the public. It is the Pakistan Army, Aadi, not its Navy or the Air Force, that has been the most powerful institution in Pakistan, right from the days of self-styled Field Marshal Ayub Khan. It has total control of Pakistan's security policies and almost complete control over its foreign policy. Now, with the FATF breathing down its neck, it has come to have a major say in its economic policy too. Have you ever heard of a chief of army staff of any army making a case for his country to be removed from the grey list and be allowed to get loans? Have you heard of any army in the world or the chief of any army or any army putting forth a proposition that it is geoeconomics, coining this word and sort of pushing it into consciousness, saying that this is it? So they were controlling the security, thanks to Kashmir. They started controlling the foreign policy, in particular with that of India and now with other nations. And now they're also controlling the finances and the economic policies. So, to my mind, this hybrid model will continue. The politicians will remain the face of the army and will remain answerable to the people. Get voted in and voted out, voted in or voted out, while the army will stay in the background and wield enormous power, total authority without accountability. It suits the army well, and the world too is shown a fig leaf of a democratically elected government. That is how it has been and will be. And if I may quote a small personal example, while on the NDC course, you have all the high commissioners and ambassadors addressing you. The Pakistani High Commissioner would come with the DA, the Army DA who was a brigadier, and with an Air Force and the Naval DAs in tow. One was a group captain, another was a captain. And he would say in the beginning of his talk that if there are any questions pertaining to security issues, my DA will take them on. So you can imagine the High Commissioner passing off awkward questions, difficult questions to the DA to answer. So who's holding the reins from this example? You can very well guess.
I think you brought it out pretty eloquently, sir, that this whole term of geoeconomics, although has been appreciated quite a bit from a lot of Indian analysts, but the question has to be asked that why is the army talking about geoeconomics? Probably they're looking for a pay rise. That's the only thing I can look at. Well, sir, when you talk about the Pakistani army, you understand the involvement has been there since 1954. Or even before, one can't say, but 1954 is the point of time where most of the people agree that the involvement of the army started up. It's been there ever since. And by the looks of it, it's going to be there in the future as well. Mike, there are two parts of this question that I'm asking you. Has the realization not dawned that the entire instability which is being caused in Pakistan is because of this involvement of the army within the army itself? Because they're basically cutting down a branch of a tree that they're sitting on themselves. And the second part is, how do you see the world reacting to this sort of a hybrid system which is going to come out? Because this time it's stoked up to USA. Next time, I don't know where it'll go. And it's, the world is being dragged into this mucky politics. How long will the world kind of accept this setting?
See, as I told you, the hybrid model will continue. But as far as the army is concerned, it has a huge say in the country. And what I would like to say that if you've been observing, and I have observed Pakistani army officers, and you can ask this from my colleagues who have served in various UN missions or faced them across the line of control, done courses with them abroad. And I have discussed it with many of them because the Pakistani army has interested me for a long time. I'm of the opinion that the average Pakistani officer is thoroughly professional. We can underrate them only to our peril. They may be feudal in their outlook, but they're very, very clear-headed professionals. And you, they will match you man for man. And in fact, the way they have dealt with the U.S. Army officers, you've seen to yourself as to how they got the meeting out of the palm of their hands. Of course, they're involved in politics, but that's only at the highest levels. Chief, one or two of his advisors. I won't even put the entire lot of corps commanders in the same picture. It's only certain of them, and not all lieutenant generals too. So there is a particular group that is interacting with the general polity, so to speak, who are representing the army. And thus far, there has been a great sense of unity within the Pakistani army. It's a very highly disciplined force. And you find things happening there, but the veterans and the others not commenting upon it. But today you have a situation where, as we just discussed now, you are having schisms within the Pakistani army that are only a little too visible to the outside world. Now, how this is going to play out, we really don't know as yet, but we will soon come to know. November is not too far away, and we shall see what happens. I will speak a little more about that as we go on.
You've hinted very clearly. So the entire chaos is about October, November. And that is something I think we all must understand. Having said that, sir, let's talk about the whole chaos which is caused, or the root cause, as per the narrative goes, today is Imran Khan. But having a tertiary analysis of Imran Khan today, one still realizes he's got a certain amount of backing from the army, because whatever he's doing and whatever he's talking, a lot of the Pakistani analysts say that ye to ladla hai. He's still has got a lot of backing. You also mentioned that, a lot of the ground level guys may not be involved, they're very professional. But when you look at a situation like this, and I'm going to try and contradict what you're saying as a question. When you look at the situation like this, wherein there is a prime minister who's getting a certain amount of support at the back end, may not be approved by the direct army command at the moment. How do you see the covert action sort of a thing playing out for Pakistan within the army? May not be with, as I said, the consent of the top leadership.
You see, Aadi, I'll take you back to the month of April, the Islamabad security dialogues. You would recollect that was taking place while at the same time the parliament was in an imbroglio, with the Imran Khan trust vote, and number of his lawmakers walking out on him and him having to face a no confidence motion. Do you remember what General Bajwa said 24 hours before the trust vote on Imran Khan? And he used this forum, the Islamabad security dialogue, to distance the army from Imran Khan foreign policy. Although there was no direct reference to him or to the political crisis that had engulfed Pakistan by then, Bajwa attempted to reach out to the US in his address. Earlier, Pakistan was non-committal on the Ukraine war, and here from the pulpit, he dubbed the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a huge tragedy. He said half of Ukraine has been destroyed. Despite legitimate security concerns of Russia, its aggression against a smaller country cannot be condoned. Whom was he hinting at? And he called for an immediate stop to violence and said Pakistan supported a solution through dialogue. And he spoke of, everything else. So what did it tell you? It told you that he has started reaching out to the United States. And this was one way that he could possibly reach out. The army is not on the same page as Imran Khan as far as relations with the US is concerned. While welcoming increasingly close ties with China, General Bajwa is not willing to alienate the US, which remains the world's only superpower. and he wants to repair the ties. And it has already started with now Bilawal Bhutto having gone there and everything else, and the US warmly speaking about Pakistan. He spoke of better relations with the EU and the United Kingdom also going forward. Imran Khan lashed out at this. He lashed out at the EU, he lashed out at the asking, when they wanted Pakistan to side with the West and condemn the Russian aggression, he spoke at a public rally then, saying EU ambassadors wrote a letter to Pakistan asking us to issue an anti-Russia statement. I asked him, did you write a letter to India also? And he went on to say, Pakistan is not a slave to anybody. Now, there is this strong disappointment, a reaction by some who expressed shock, disappointment, surprise at Bajwa's statement against an independent foreign policy of Pakistan, for which they say Imran Khan sacrifices government. There are voices within the military segment. Now you ask yourself, would Imran Khan be in a position today to take on the might of the Pakistan state unless he knew he had some kind of backing in some form, and there would be people, or there are people, who are not coming out openly but supporting him?
Absolutely. There is no question, sir. As a matter of fact, when he ran away from Islamabad during that failed long march, he went straight to Peshawar.
Yeah. You see, the last thing Pakistan now needs is an election. Imran Khan knows that. The new government consists of bitter foes who are together only because they wanted Imran Khan out of the way. If you have an election today, they'll be fighting each other.
Yeah.
And who will be the likely winner? If the votes go 3 ways or 4 ways or 5 ways, and people get disgusted, it's like our old Janata Party experiment that happened, which the only point in common was Indira hatao. So Indira Gandhi hat gayi, phir kya hua? You get the point. They have squabbled amongst themselves. The only thing holding them together today is power and the fear of another election. And you see, Imran was removed not only because he was perceived to be a disaster by these entrenched lobbies, but Bajwa felt that he was getting too big for his boots and needed to be cut down to his size.
Yeah.
But he has not lost his popularity, and that is reflected by the groundswell of support he commands. And as I told you, obviously, there's a large section in the army, both serving and honest, who feel he's honest and he's good for Pakistan. He knows that. Imran wants to encash upon it while the going is good, and sympathy for him exists.
Why not, sir? Sir, the army, now I'm going to go out on a limb and put my neck on the line here. A lot of people might not agree with what I say, but the army has a political wing as well. And I feel that political wing is the TLP. Because that particular animal has been taken out, it's been used and it's been shelved at the beck and call of the army. If somebody's going to turn around and say that there is a civilian sort of a person or a civilian authority that drives this TLP, I kind of really want to understand the logic behind it, because I really feel that the army wanted to, when they wanted to prop up Imran Khan, they brought the TLP out, the whole tamasha happened. When they wanted to prop down Imran Khan, the TLP came out and the whole tamasha happened, and that's where this whole downfall started. Question is, with the radicalization happening in Pakistan today, do you think the army will make another mistake, as they've made many before, with these kind of outfits which are biting them back today?
You see, Pakistan has got used to riding the tiger. It's not now. It started in 1979 with the Taliban and the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. From then on, they've been playing footsie with various elements. Today, you have the Haqqani faction. They are been riding the tiger, and I commend them for having ridden it so well, but they can't dismount from the tiger today. You see, they're riding the tiger, but they can't dismount from it. Pakistan, they had the army gave unabashed support to the TLP because the TLP could send a message to the civilian rulers anyone who is working at cross purposes with the military. The TLP protests in Punjab last year took place at the time when this controversy of the new appointment of the DGISI was taking place. And it brought in the open now what are the TLP fundamentalist, not even a political entity, a fundamentalist entity, a religious entity. What does it have to do with a standoff between the army and the military? It's only in Pakistan that such things happen. So the military may have used the TLP protests and subsequent agreement to signal to Imran Khan at that time not to cross the line. Now it will use it to tell these people not to cross the line. They've always used somebody. So I won't read too much into it. They will be able to handle it. They've handled it for now, for the last 43 years. And I'm sure they'll handle it in the future as well. It's only thing, as I told you, if they dismount from the tiger, then they're in trouble. And that they're not likely to have.
Indeed,
also,
sir.
You must understand these organizations. What are these organizations? They're full of fundamentalist people. And these fundamentalists do not have loyalty to any particular organization. They have loyalty towards an ideology. So if they find one organization by any name not adhering to the ideology as they perceive it, they will immediately leave and join another organization. And then from there, leave and join the third organization. The ideology remains the same. It's the varying degrees of gray in that ideology that we are looking at, or I would say varying degrees of black in the ideology. So this is what these people follow. So I would tell you that, and your viewers, that there's no point reading too much into it. They will use these organizations. The army will use it to its own ends. That's a given.
That I understand, sir. But these kind of actions have bitten them back. I mean, Taliban today is creating issues for their own existence. The organizations they created in Kashmir are, if they're not able to today back them, and we know certain organizations are against the whole establishment within Pakistan because then the Pakistanis aren't able to provide them the support that they need. So the question of, as you very rightly said, that they know how to ride the tiger, but how do they get off? And that's the question, which is a bit scary.
You see, if you just step back and look at it, I try to put myself in their shoes and try and imagine what it is. I need these organizations.
Oh yeah.
All right. They're hitting back at me at a certain level, at a lower level. Attacking a post here, doing something there, they're hurting me. So I hit back at them. I'm losing some soldiers. I'm knocking some of them out, and I'll continue to knock them out. Anyone who picks up arms against me, I'll knock him out. He has to listen to me. If he doesn't listen to me, he's not good. So I'm willing to absorb casualties at a lower level. And that says a lot for the Pakistani army, which I do not know how to do it. The Indian army, you will never find our senior officers or senior leadership hobnobbing with such elements who are taking on our junior leaders and our troops. I mean, unheard of. No army in the world would do it. But the Pakistan army, as you have seen, there's a huge disconnect. Their men are getting hit at the lower level, and at the top level, they're having talks with these people. I fail to understand this mindset.
I think it's nothing but selfishness, and I think you've hit it spot on when you bring it out that the damage is not to the guys who are actually playing these games. It's not to the big huge generals which are sitting on these golden thrones.
Correct.
It's to that poor soldier earning probably $20,000 a month who's standing on this thing, who gets fired at from 5 different directions and loses his life, and probably is never even reported that he's died. So I think you've brought it out very nicely. Thank you so much for that, sir, because a lot of people would not understand why these games are being played at a time where the Pakistani army should be concentrating on something else. But as you also again said, that riding a tiger is easy, but getting off it is not as simple as one can decipher it to be. So that was an interesting answer that you gave, which actually brings in quite a bit of clarity with regards to the positioning of the Pakistani army with these terrorist groups. I'd like to take that a step forward. Is the factor that the Pakistani army, it's well known, it's not something which is a secret, and they're in the grey list because of this. Their establishment has been involved in terror-related activities. One of the things that I found very interesting, and when you were talking about the Islamabad security dialogues, I also remember General Bajwa talking about the factor that, when I have to buy engines, I go to Germany, I go to Austria, I go to Ukraine, they don't give it to me. I have to go to other small countries. And two factors: one, he never mentioned China. Uh, Two, he also mentioned that he's not able to keep his security up to what he would desire it to be because of the various factors that we've spoken about. This situation is not going to get better. How do you think the preparedness of this army going forward will deteriorate or be more dependent on China, or how do you think this will, span out?
Okay, I'll take this question at a very, very fundamental level. The Pakistani army knows fully well that India is a status quo power from their line of thinking, and I'm sure they've all gamed it. And at best, India would make a few incursions that also to knock terror camps like we've done a couple of years ago and get back. You recollect in the 1999 Kargil War of Vijay, we continued to hold the line of control as sacrosanct. So they know India is not going to take any large scale action against Pakistan unless India is really prompted to do so or forced to do so by Pakistan itself. But yes, they use India as a bogey to strengthen their own position within the Pakistan polity, to be able to get funds, and to be also able to manage all their affairs using India. Because if India was not a threat, there is no reason for the Pakistani army to exist in the form that it is existing. I'm not denying that you don't need an army there. But in the form that it exists, India centric, not at all. So I will take his statements about equipment, etc., not very seriously. He's got Western sources, he's got Chinese sources. He's not building his own industry, that there's no industry worth its being, but they are well supplied. Turkey is there, the other Islamic countries are there to give them weapons, and they can go and buy it off the shelf because the decision making in the procurement process is completely uncomplicated, unlike ours. So I won't take that too seriously, that statement of this.
That's something that a lot of, I also had in mind when I was actually preparing this question, that there are loads of people that would keep Pakistan up, especially China, to ensure that there is a diversion that India has to face always with regards its security. So the last question, and this is something that you hinted to in one of your answers, and I want to actually dwell a little deeper into this. The entire game of the elections and all this which is happening today is with a timeline of October and November. It is to decide, and whoever stays in power is going to decide this thing, the new army chief. Not two things. One, whoever decides the army chief normally is thrown out by the same army chief, and that's something that we've seen before. Two, isn't it today in the army's interest to ensure that there is no single leader that comes out strong enough to unilaterally decide an army chief and be stronger than probably a situation close to what not Ziaul Haq, Bhutto had during the 70s after the 71 defeat? How do you see these two situations playing out with the whole October-November timelines?
Ah, a difficult question. Asking me to do some crystal ball gazing, but I shall take it on. The first thing I would like to tell you is that today Shahbaz Sharif is the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is the head of the government. The files go to him. He will clear it. His position is threatened only by Imran Khan today, not within the coalition of his. And if this coalition continues till well after November, at least till November, as I see it, Shahbaz Sharif will appoint a General Bajwa loyalist as the chief. You see, I did a little bit of digging into this. And let me tell you, estimates suggest about 20 generals would have retired or have retired, would be retiring between Bajwa's extension in 2019 and his tenure later this year. Between 2019, when he was given an extension on August, September, till November 22. It's 3-year extension. There have been over 20 contenders for the post, I would say, potential contenders who have retired or would be retiring, and some would be retiring now. This means that very few in the army with credentials to take over as the chief with the kind of right QRs. But in this, two factors will ultimately be considered by the Prime Minister. First and most important, General Bajwa's recommendation. And second is the seniority principle. Now, the example that you alluded to, Bhutto, do you know that General Zia-ul-Haq superseded almost 14 or 19 generals at that time. He was the junior most lieutenant general. And he selected him, Prime Minister Bhutto selected him because he thought that this is one pliable man, and Zia's nature was very obsequious. He used to kowtow before authority and, the typical Ji Hazuri kind of a thing. But once he became the chief, you saw what he did to Bhutto and ensured that he stayed on till he died in the plane crash. If he hadn't died, he would have continued for many more years. And there was nobody coming close to him. Because again, in the army, seniority matters. And somebody a couple of years senior or junior to me, I know well. But as the things go on, as officers get more and more junior to you, the distance increases, the respect increases. They don't see you as a rival. They accept your authority there. So the seniority principle and Bajwa's recommendation are going to come in hand. Now, who are the contenders for the post? Let us see. The GOC Tenko is Lieutenant General Shamshad Mirza. He will be the senior most serving officer in the Pakistan Army after General Bajwa's retirement. The next senior is Lieutenant General Azhar Abbas, who is the current Chief of General Staff, a very important appointment in Pakistan. And the thing about General Azhar Abbas is that he's a Shia. Now, this may work in his favor, as it will be seen as Pakistan Army is serious about taking on Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. On the other hand, please remember, Pakistan is a strongly Sunni country. Mm-hmm. And it may just open up another front if General Abbas is chosen, superseding General Mirza. Can you have a Shia superseding a Sunni? That will create a very difficult problem for the Pakistani polity. We have seen earlier what happened to an outstanding Ahmadiyya who was appointed as finance minister by Imran Khan.
Yeah.
So to my mind, I'm risking this saying this on your channel, it is likely that General Mirza will step into the shoes of General Bajwa. But there's a caveat here. Anything can happen between now, that is June 22 and November 22. If Imran Khan still commands the influence and support from him within the army, if it keeps growing, and this is basically your question, the essence of your question. If the support from Imran Khan within the army grows, you could see General Faiz Hamid turning the hat of the COS, a remote possibility as of now, but something I will not dismiss out of hand. It depends on how the next couple of months play out.
It's not very easy to predict about Pakistan, so you got to keep all the little pawns in the game because things change there overnight. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely
no. There was talk about some people saying that Bajwa may seek a further extension, but I don't think he's keen. And in fact, the DG ISPR mentioned it in, I think, before the Islamabad security dialogue or sometime around then, saying that the chief is not keen on an extension and he's not going to seek one either. So they would be looking for someone, and let us see. There must be talk going on in Pakistan. There'd be some who would be viewing your channel also, and you may get some comments on this. But let's see.
Apparently, yes, I do get quite a lot of funny emails. I mean, because I made the mistake of putting my email on the.
That's all right.
This thing.
You're in public domain, accept it, and
it's interesting to see that when you wake up in the morning, you kind of read that and you become a little lighthearted and you're like, okay, chal, theek hai. Something is happening anywhere. Although I'm not that big, but for me, one odd email here itself is a little bit.
No, it's good. You're doing a fine job. Just continue.
Thank you, sir. Sir, thank you so much. I think you've taken the ball, you've bounced it around, and you've kind of gazed around it, because in Pakistan, regular crystal ball can be looked through. In Pakistan, you got to shake it, dive it, wash it, clean it, and then something appears in the middle, because it's a mysterious country. A lot of us feel that we know the country. A lot of Indians feel that we know the country, but it's unexpected what all happens there. It's absolutely unexpected. I don't think anybody figured out what would happen with regards to Imran Khan. I didn't think anybody would figure out Shahbaz Sharif, and I didn't think anybody would figure out that this government was also about to fall about 10 days ago when somebody propped it up again. So it's a whole mysterious challenge, because I keep watching these analysts and they change their narratives pretty much every day. So it's interesting. But thank you for maintaining the line of the superiority of the army and its wish to keep things as far as possible together. And that, I think, is the bottom line that I take from the talk that you've given, is that stability for them is the most critical, because otherwise they lose their chair, and that's just about it. Thank you so much, sir. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you with your research experience. And till next time for another funny and interesting subject like this. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you. Jai Hind to you and your viewers. God bless.
Thank you, sir.